The Ramchal in Derech Hashem brings down a lot of details, and ultimately what the Ramchal is speaking about is the plan, is the entire plan of creation, Part of the problem is when you learn the Ramchal or you learn anything that has a lot of details, you get lost. You get lost in the details, and after a while, it's just one detail after another that is loosely connected. And you don't really see, how it's organized. That's why in many ways it's critical to organize the material first as a map. And then each area or idea or category, you see them, and then you begin to realize that all the details really fit into categories, They fit into, into major categories, and these categories organize the details. Therefore, what I had to do is that just as part of this, because Ramchal is really going to go very much into detail, the concept of judgment, God's judgment and so on, is just to give you that there are really, if you really think about it, there are at least 8 categories, which are overall headings, of which really all these details will really go under. And that's really the best way to remember it, So, I'm going to give you that. It's like a map. Okay, so the first idea, topic, category, is called man and everything about him. Man means Jews, non-Jews, but it actually means more than man. It means entities or living forms, right? That includes animals. It includes all living forms in creation. So that's category 1. But obviously the one that we're concerned mostly, obviously, is mankind. And of mankind, we're concerned with Jews. So that's category 1, is mankind. The second category, after mankind, is that mankind has been given a task, a job. So you have the individual, let's call him the subject. He has to do something. He has a certain requirement, a certain job. So then there's a whole concept of the task, and then there's a lot of details that goes into the task. What does he have to do? Then the third idea is that the task itself must be free will, bechira, free will. That he has to be able to do the task, right, and be a true cause of doing the task. He is the one responsible. So then you have the whole area called free will, where he's not compelled to do anything by God. He is given a certain measure where he can do what he wants without any limits in a certain sense, and certainly God does not impose his will. The fourth idea, he's got free will to do the task, right? But wait a minute. But what God did is not just give him free will. God gave him what's called drives. He's got drives to do either one side of the task or the other. We know that, of course, to be Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, But what they really are is inclinations or drives, and so on. So that itself is a whole topic, What is the Yetzer Hara? What is the Yetzer Tov? How do they interact with man? What can they try? What can they drive man to? To where? So that's the whole area of the Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov, the concept of drives. I once mentioned why a person has to have a drive, because like this, a guy would just sit down and say, I don't have to do anything. He has to be driven, If a person didn't have hunger, for instance, would he ever eat? We eat because we're driven to eat. We get hungry, So there are all kinds of drives. Very important. It's drives force a guy to choose, and therefore to take a certain direction, and either to do the task or to not do the task. That's the concept of a drive. In other words, there's no such thing as neutral. You are driven. You are driven either inside A or inside B. That's why the concept of yitzros, as they call them, the inclinations or the drives, is critical. Then, that's the fourth topic. Then you have the fifth topic, which is okay. You have man, right? You have the free will, the task, the drives. What does he do? That's the concept of the act itself, or the deed. That a person can do many different types of deeds. That itself is an entire topic. What are the deeds that a person can do? What are the possibilities in terms of what he does? See? That's all under the concepts called act. That's number 5. Then we have number 6. So besides the concept of act, what are the results? What happens if you do this act? What happens if you do that act? Those are the results of his actions, you see. So that's another category, which is again very important. And we find that, right, in a general way, that the acts of man has repercussions not only in the physical world, but in the spiritual worlds. And that's really the major concern. Those are called results of his acts, you see. Then after that, okay, so the guy did something because he was driven. It's all free, you know, and did he adhere to the task or not? But then there's the concept called consequences. Well, he did something, these are the results. But what's the consequences? What are consequences? By who? By God. The whole concept of judgment are consequences. You see? In other words, God looks at the results, what he did with free will and so on. And God says, okay, I need to examine exactly what this person did, and based on what he did, I will now offer consequences. The whole concept of the judgment of God, which is Angas HaMishpat, the whole concept of Mishpat, which is judgment or justice, is all about in the topic called consequences. It's a huge topic, because the question is, how does God judge a person, right? And what are the possibilities of the judgment of God? Based on what principle? Does God judge one way, or he judges another way, and so on? It's a huge topic. In fact, most of our lives, right, revolve around what? The results of our deeds, but in many ways, the consequences of judgment of God. What happens to a person? Is he wealthy? Is he sick? Right? Is he successful? Is he a failure? It's all part of the judgment of God. You see? So we want to understand that. That's a huge topic. You see? And then the last topic, and there are more subdivisions and so on, the last topic is what? Is what's the ultimate consequence, which is Olam Haba, the future world. You see? There you are. Those are 8 different categories that we can organize everything the Ramchal says in those 8 categories. So that's a map. It's a good roadmap to begin to understand what's going on. So therefore, all the details of the Ramchal either fit into what? Who is the entity called man? Right? And that's huge, right? What is the task of man that God has assigned? You see. And then the concept of what? Of free will. Why is there free will? Drives. Why are there drives? See, what are the deeds that a person can do? What are the results? And what are the judgment, the consequences of what he does? You see? And what does all of this have to do with Olam Haba, the future world? Which ultimately, when you look at the whole thing, in this big scenario, Olam Haba is called purpose. The whole point of all previous 7 topics is the purpose of creation, which is to get you into Olam Haba, which is really the whole purpose. This is the whole consciousness of God, to get people into Olam Haba. Okay? Therefore, what I've done is organize, right, every topic based on that. You see. Now, there are also many other topics which especially were prominent in the beginning, the first chelik, under entities. Well, there's man, there's the animals of this earth, right? But then there are entities called angels. You see? Then there's the greatest of all entities is God. You see? So on the entities, right, we would look at God, angels, man. How do they all fit? You see? How do they all interrelate? So everything that Ramchal says, I believe, ultimately can go under one of these categories. You see? Now on the task, what would we put? Mitzvahs. The whole concept of avodah, the service, all goes under the task. And you see? And it's interesting that the Ramchal wrote Sforim on each of these ideas. Like the Mesilas Yesharim, for instance, right? The Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just and so on, right? Which is a whole book on Musa, right? Or the path that you must do. Where does that fit? Task. That whole sefer of Mesilas Yesharim goes in the category called task. You see. So therefore, hopefully with this kind of categorization and structure, we now can have a a feel of where everything seems to belong. You want to hear something?
This whole map fits under what category? Meaning,
the whole map fits under what?
What categories? Meaning, this you just gave us 8 categories.
Yeah.
What do they fit under?
God's plan.
That's called Hashkafa. What is that called?
No. Well, God's plan is called Hashkafa. Yeah. That's what the whole thing fits under. God's plan. And then you have 8 different ideas or topics that fit under his plan. That he has to create man, task for the man, free will, drives, deeds, and then you have the results of those deeds. Then you have the consequences, which is the whole concept of judgment, Then you have the future world, the future world.
But Kabbalah is in...
But Kabbalah is...
in where?
Oh, where does Kabbalah fit? Because remember I said everything fits.
Of this, or is it in...
No. Because when you think about that, like I said, as part of the entities, subjects that exist, there's God, right? So there's God. This is the plan. What's the ultimate plan? How to get you to the number 8, which is Olam Haba, right? How do you get a guy, right? So consequences. Would you ask which?
Kabbalah's results or consequences?
No. I'm not going to put Kabbalah aside for 1 minute. So the anhogas of God, the behavior of God, or his conduct, right? Remember I once mentioned that there are several that God's behaviors can be organized in 3 ideas. 1, the setup, and the setup is man, the task, the free will. You see that's the setup. Remember? Then I said there was Anhogas HaMishpat, which is the attribute or the behavior of God when he judges. That's consequences. You see? Then I said there's what's called Anhogas HaYichud, which is the guarantee or the backup plan that man will get into Olam Haba, and that is also consequences. You see? One of the consequences of man's behavior is either God can judge him, or, right, that's the concept of judgment and justice, or he can enable the guy to get into Olam Haba by a different means, which is a backup system. But that's also consequences. Now, Kabbalah, right? Kabbalah is the concept of the interaction. How does God interact with this creation? You see, it's in a certain sense, when God wants to interact with the world, right? How does he do it? And the answer is that he emits forces, and those forces are spheres. They can create realities, right? And then the reality itself has many different divisions and so on. But ultimately, what it is the you see, let's put it this way: task would have 2 things: subdivision. Task would be what's the staging, the background, right? And then in that, which is the entire, it's like actors acting on a stage. Well, there's a whole background to what they act, you see? So the task must have a background in order for man to do his task, you see? So A, what is the background? And B, what is the task within that background? Part of the background is the physical universe and the spiritual universe, you see, in order for man to do his task. Actually, theoretically, you could say that there are 9 areas, and I could make those 2 divisions, right? One is the entire background of man, both physical and spiritual. And the second, another topic would be the actual task within that setup. So actually, the question is very good, because and none of that, you prompt me to make a 9th category, because it's so big that it does justify, you know? So you have man, or entities, then you have the bria, the setup, which is the spiritual universe, is Kabbalah, the physical universe is science, all the scientific disciplines, which study the whole physical universe, right? And then of course then the interconnection. Then you have the task of man within that backstage, you see? And then you have the free will, the drives, you see? So actually, I would make 9 categories, yeah. And Kabbalah would fit in number 2.
So all that would be under God's plan.
All of this is it's God's plan, yeah. Yeah. So these 9 different categories is all under God's plan, yeah. And now you can subdivide any chokhmah, any of the ideas of the Ramchal. Well, this topic is in here, this topic is here, and you don't get lost. I just give you a compass, or I should say a GPS. In fact, GPS would be God's plan systematized. A GPS. How's that sound? See? But I find this subdivision, this division of God's plan very useful, because I don't get confused, because when I'm talking about one thing, I say, wait a minute, what's he really what's the area he's talking about? You see? And so on, you know. I find it very useful. Or else it's just like it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, you give 1,000 pieces to a guy, he said, put it together, right? What's the first thing he asks for? Where's the box? They always ask for the box, right? Why? Because the box has all the pieces organized. The picture, see? And what's very important, it's very important in terms of method, you know? Before you enter any area that has 1,000 pieces, right? Don't even begin to assemble the pieces. Try to figure out what the box is, because you're going to need it, you see? So that's what I would say. So these 9 categories under God's plan, right, is really the picture of all these thousands of details that the Ramchal is approaching in Derech Hashem and in Das Tunis. Doesn't make a difference, you see? Good. Any other questions? Okay. Now, so the Ramchal says something very important, and now you see where it all fits, right? Of all these things, all these 9 categories, which is the greatest and most important category? In other words, which category determines every other category? We're looking at determinant or cause. That's what you always zero into. In other words, I call it the foundational concept. Every area that you can talk about has one idea that encompasses the details of everything. Find that idea. Not easy. Find out what's called the foundational concept. It is the foundation of the whole structure. And then that foundational concept is now subdivided into many ideas. And that's how you create an entire building. You see? You could do that in the area, anywhere in Torah. Doesn't make a difference. You see? Anywhere in the area in Halacha. Find a foundational concept. Should I give you an example? Moed, Shabbos. What's the foundational concept of Shabbos? And then we'll look at it in Hashkafa. What is that one idea that is central or foundational to the whole Seder Moed, which is Shabbos, Erevin, Psachim, Shkolim, Yoima, Rosh Hashanah, Chagiga, Beitza, Tainus, Moed Chagiga, Darivat Sukkah? Yeah. What is the foundational concept? Think. It's not easy. I want the one idea that embraces the whole Seder Moed. Once you find that idea, then you can begin to see how everything else fits.
The time.
Who?
The time.
Time, good. It's not total, but it's certainly part of it.
All the time.
Time, you know? But it's basically two ideas. That's it. Time
And what you do in that
Activity.
and activity. There you are. It's activity that is governed by time, either being required or forbidden. That's it. Regulated. That's it. It's amazing that the whole Seder Moed, the whole area, which is all the holidays, right, is only it's only governed by just two ideas: time and the activity that is regulated by time, either being forbidden or required. That's it. You see? And once you have that, then of course you can subdivide. Well, there's a seventh day called Shabbos, and then there's a 15th day of Nisan called Pesach, and so on. And all of these things have activity, required or forbidden, governed by time. You see? Hashkafa. Out of the 9 categories that I've given you, which is the most important? Which is the idea that governs all the other 8? Bechira? No.
Men.
Who?
Men.
Man? No.
7 more.
Well,
7 more. Come on, guys, stop sleeping. Which is it? I gave you 9 of them, right? Shall I repeat the 9?
well, the final result.
Bingo. Exactly. The ultimate purpose of creation is the experience in Olam Haba. That governs everything. It governs the type of entity, which is man, right? The task, the setup, right? The free will, the the acts and the drives, right? It governs everything. What do you want to do with the God? What do you want in the end? And that will govern everything. That's why Olam Haba is critical to study. Because in the end, that's what determined everything. You see. You know? Got it? That's the concept. Soif machshava, right?
So machshava
Tchila, exactly. In the beginning, it was Olam Haba. Everything follows from that. You see? And therefore, you can begin to put it together, you know? What does the Russian want in Olam Haba? Which is, and the Ramchal says that, you know? Hence, the ultimate end of all his involvements is the tranquility in the world to come. He actually says it. That's what determined everything, you see? And in the end, what is Olam Haba? Which he said, we know, right? In the end, what Olam Haba is, right, is an experience which is the greatest of all experiences in terms of its goodness. And what is that? Attachment to God. It's called Dveikus. That is the greatest of all goods. And that's what God wants. To create a situation in which somebody, something is going to connect to him. And that experience, which is called dvekus, clinging or attachment, is the greatest of all. There you are. Now God's got to say, okay, who is it going to be? What's it going to be? How's it going to be? You see? What's the setup that I have to do? You see? And what God is always considering is this, which is interesting. How do I get a guy into Olam Haba, notwithstanding the fact that this guy really has free will? And if he has free will, he's not going to get there by himself, you know? He's going to choose not to do the task, which is evil, whatever. So I always got to think of how to get the guy into Olam Haba. Think about that. Interesting. You see? So God had to create an entire series of behaviors to get a guy into Olam Haba. Because the guy's not going to be able to get there by himself. So those are called assisting devices. You see? So in terms of consequences, there's judgment and there is assisting devices. You see? Then the whole thing unfolds like this. You see? Now, what is the greatest experience a man has? What is the greatest experience you can have, really? What do you think?
In this world or in the next world?
In any world. Tell me.
Closest to God.
What?
Closest to God.
Not really. What is the greatest experience you can ask for?
Being God.
Who?
Being God.
No. You're missing the fundamental idea. The greatest experience an individual can have is to be. You guys are ignoring the fact that existence itself is the greatest experience of all. Think about that. Anybody can top existence? No. Because the opposite of existence is non-existence. Yes? Therefore, the greatest experience that you have already is existence itself. It's a game changer. You see? Because all those things or people that don't exist ain't. What do they have? Now, within existence itself, right? That's called there's existence and non-existence, dichotomies. The greatest type of existence, once you exist, is God, is attachment to God. So that's it. Olam Haba is a place that you are, and the type of are is attachment. That's it. You can't beat those two things. You see? So based on that, the Rabbi Hashem decided everything. I want to make things exist, and I want them to exist in Olam Haba, which is fundamentally a place that they can attach to me. You see? And that will now determine everything. You see. So therefore, he creates an individual, right, that can attach to him, that can exist, and is capable, has the capacity to attach to God. You see. And then, but God makes a major decision, which we know. What is a major decision? You know, there's a problem here. If I make him exist, right, and I give him that attachment, there's a problem called Nahamadik Sufa. This is the problem of man's existence. Nahamadik Sufa is bread of shame, you see. And therefore, he will experience that. And I gave a whole shiur on what Nahamadik Sufa is, what bread of shame is. It's a whole shiur, right? But that's a central idea, because that altered the status of man. Because of the concept of Nahamadik Sufa, bread of shame, that a person will feel an incredible sense of inferiority if he in no way contributes to being in Olam Haba, the future world, attached to God. because of that incredible experience of inferiority, right? Therefore, God has to now rearrange everything. It's got to give him a task, got to give him a free will, got to give him a drive, results, consequences. You see? So that concept of Naam Ksufa altered everything. It altered everything. It's fundamental how it altered the whole creation. Had to change because of the sense of inferiority a person has when he is not master of his own fate. You see? So, what I'm doing is, you can begin to see the whole thing, how it builds, right? So the first idea is the future world and attachment to God, which means two things: existence and the type of existence. Then the second thing you begin to think about, right, is that there has to be some type of a subject, right, who has the capacity to do this. And then the third thing, which interferes with everything, is the concept of the shame, the inferiority. If a person is placed into Olam Haba directly or immediately. You see? And that brings you, of course, to the fourth idea. You know, I have a future world, I have man, I have the bread of shame, which is an incredible sense of inferiority. So obviously now there has to be two things going on. There has to be an Olam Hazeh, which is the preparation, where you will remove Naam Ksufa, and then there has to be the Olam Haba, which is now the whole point of everything. You see? It's really a very logical sequence. You see? And then everything else basically fits under that, fits under those ideas. You see? And each one is a whole study in itself. You see? Okay. Any questions?
Why couldn't...
Who?
You probably addressed this in the Shir on Naam Ksufa, but I missed it. Why couldn't Hashem just remove this emotion of shame from human consciousness?
Yeah, I addressed that, and you were right. I addressed it. Yeah.
You go back to it.
I'll go back.
Yeah, you got to go. I gave a whole shir on that sometime in May.
I saw it posted.
Yeah, it's posted. I'm sure I'll be posted. Yeah, so yeah, very important shir, because that's the whole rationale of why there has to be two places. Or else, why would we have to have two places? You see. Besides Naam Ksufa, the whole need to have a place where you earn reward, it jeopardizes because your reward depends on what you did. And if you didn't do the job, you don't get anything, as we will see. There are consequences to a person's act. If a person is thoroughly evil, you know, he disappears. It's called annihilation, you know. What's the opposite of Olam Haba? What's the opposite of the future world? So some people think it's Gehenna. No, it's annihilation. You either exist or you don't exist. That's really all it is, you know. You got to work your way into a place that has eternal existence. The opposite of that is you don't exist at all, which God can easily arrange, you know, and which He does arrange, you know, which we begin to see, you know. But those are the only two alternatives there are. There is no third alternative. Gehenna is not an alternative. Neither is Gan Eden. They are temporary gaps or temporary stations along the way. But ultimately, there is nothing else. Either is Olam Haba, and you're in it, or you don't exist, and therefore you're nowhere.
How about bad existence? Isn't that worse? Shouldn't that be like the opposite?
That what?
If Olam Haba is existence, but the best type of existence, the opposite of Olam Haba should be existence, but the worst type of existence.
Well, why would God do that?
Why would He do that?
Why would He do that? In other words, it's an eternal Gehenna. As far as I know, the only ones who believe in an eternal Gehenna are the Christians, right? Because they say what? That if you don't believe in Him and all that stuff, right? You will burn in purgatory, right? Eternally, right? They're the only religion that I know that has an eternal purgatory. But why would God do that? It doesn't make any sense. Why? Because there is nothing that you could do. Even Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, if you added up the evil that this man did, I mean, it's astounding what he did. But even he doesn't go on eternally in purgatory, in Gehenna. Nothing can get you in Gehenna eternally. Right? It doesn't make sense. That's infinite. There's no such thing as an evil that's infinite. It can be very bad, you know. There's no such thing as an infinite evil or eternal evil. So the whole idea is nonsense, you see. But not only that, why would God do that to a guy? You know, a guy's going to beg God, please take me out of existence. You know, don't give me this eternal damnation. It doesn't make sense, you know. So that's it. Either you're in Olam Haba or you are nowhere. And that's it, you see. So therefore God has to think of how to get you into Olam Haba. That's a great deal of his thinking process, by the way. You know. The what?
Knowing what he said about eternal damnation, the truth is that coming from a point of where Hakadosh Baruch Hu was coming from, where nothing is on the table. Hashem created it all. So if you have eternal bliss is not warranted either. The only reason Hashem
eternal bliss is not what?
Eternal bliss is not warranted in the first place either.
No, exactly.
So Hashem, quote unquote, jumped through hoops, so to speak, to get us to eternal bliss.
Correct.
So then so he easily could have done eternal damnation as well. Theoretically, if that was.
Yeah, but
I'm not trying to be I know, but still.
We all love to see Hitler burning Gehenna for all eternity. Well, we're enjoying Olam Haba for eternity. We love to see Hitler burning for eternity.
I mean, for some people, that is their Olam Haba, watching it burn eternally. That is their eternal.
Hashem is not an Aksar, and
yeah, because in the end, God is Tov. This is very important. In other words, the garb or the costume that God has decided to adapt. In other words, he has adapted a certain characteristic profile. You see? And his profile is Tov. You know, for a being that's infinitely Tov, good, he's not going to put somebody through eternal purgatory, eternal Gehenna. You know what I'm saying? And therefore, why would he do that kind of stuff? But the point you raise is very important. No good can be eternal in and of itself. You're right. Just like there's no evil that can be eternal, there's no good that can be eternal. You know what I'm saying? I don't care what you do. Whatever you do, it can never justify an eternal future world, paradise, whatever you want to call it, right? But that's what happens when God decides, I'm going to step out of line, right? Because my characteristic is Toiv, and I'm going to elevate something which would have ended. You know, if it had a value, you could say, let's say Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He was incredibly Toiv. So it'll go on for 100,000 years. His Olam Haba would go on for 100,000 years, and that's it. There's no thing as an eternal. There's no eternal Olam Haba based on any good deed. I don't care what it is. But that's where the Toiv comes in. You see? In fact, that's the concept of ultimate chesed. You see? So the chesed of God, actually there's several chasadim of God, but the kindness of God is that he gives you a reward which is finite, and he will give you the reward infinitely. That already borders on his chesed. And there are several things which God did that purely stem from chesed. In other words, there's no rhyme or reason why they should happen. One of them, what?
You still flip the switch. At the end of the day, you still flip the switch.
Yes. No, but even if you flip the switch, so what? All it means is that you caused the good, right? But whatever good you did, which you caused, why do you get an infinite reward? A reward that never stops. It doesn't make sense. No good is worth that much. But that's already, like I say, part of the chesed of God is that he said, there's certain things, because my profile is goodness, I will allow you to enjoy what you did good, right? Infinitely and eternally. It will never end. That's an unbelievable chesed, of which we are astounded by that type of goodness. Because it has no basis in rationality. Because God can say, okay, I like what you did, I'll give you 100,000 years of Olam Haba. right? And that's it, you know. Okay, 100,000 years, you got far more than you know, whatever, and it's over with, you know. But he never said that. That's what a deal that is, you know.
Unless you say that you can never fulfill that olam haba in its entirety if you have a looming shadow of non-existence. Meaning, meaning unless you say there's a logical rationale as well. Hashem, so to speak, is forced to give something infinite olam haba, otherwise there'd always be that shadow of impending non-existence.
So what?
So what?
You don't deserve more.
No, because right now he can't enjoy his olam haba.
Sure he can.
Sure he can.
Everybody knows they're going to die someday, right? Believe me, a lot of guys are enjoying their life.
No, that's only because
Not thinking about the day of death.
Only because
That's
it's only because they're sheker.
No. God would allow you in your mind to ignore that. Just like now, most people do not think that they're going to die.
Now you have sheker, so you're able to ignore something.
No, so give you the sheker there. Believe me, he can give you the ability to ignore the fact that you only got 100,000 years to go. Think about that, okay?
How do you reconcile that with Venus?
You know, you only get nervous, right? In the 99,999 year. That's where you get nervous, you know? Fine, okay. But that's a long time to worry about this, you know? And you think about it, when the average guy lives, 80, 90 years? Alavai, right? That's a lot less than 100,000 years. You know, meanwhile, most people, they live life. You know, they don't think about the day of death. You know what I'm saying? They just accept it.
Their mind doesn't let them.
No, they don't, because they've accepted the fact that this will not go on forever, that after, you know, whatever decades it's over with, and they carry on with their life. They resign themselves to that fate, don't worry about it, and finish. You know, same thing with Olam Haba. You know? Anyway, yeah.
How do you reconcile that with Venus Hashem Evadoi, that there's the 8,000 year Hashem is alone, there's nothing else?
No, not that he's alone. No, that's not what it means. It means that in the 8,000th year, actually in the 7,000th year, right now we see people, and they're all important, right? But in the 7,000th year, we realize that everybody is a zero. That's what it means. It means God doesn't show that he is not only absolutely one, but he's the only one. Everybody else, you don't realize what a zero you are. You see, you'll have a major mental breakdown, if you realize what a zero you are. You see, so right now we see there are important people. You know, there are tzaddikim, and they all look like they're important, and they all look like there's somebody. You see, in the 7,000th year, when it says "V'nizgav Hashem levadeh b'yom hahu" on that day, what it means is that all of a sudden the reality of zeroness, there's such a word, the reality that you and everybody else, including Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Akiva, the Tanoim, they're all zero. You see, right now they look like they have what's called a phanem. They look like they are somebody, you see? That they are men of substance, you see? But there comes a time in reality that you realize that everybody is zero. We don't understand that. And then you realize the reality of God is that he's the only thing that exists really, and in some way you emanate, that you have no position of reality really. Not that you have a position in reality of some sort. You have no position, you see. And therefore, all Tanoim, Amoraim, and Ovos, Nevi'im, prophets, you know, you realize that the whole thing is zero, is nothing. That's what it means. Hashem is no, but it doesn't mean you disappear. It means that you've connected to reality, you see, of the absolute nothingness of everybody.
Is that what Moshe Rabbeinu and
What?
Is that what they meant? Rabbeinu said, "Anochi off of Eifel."
Yes,
Moshe
no.
Rabbeinu says, "Anachnu ma."
More.
Did they realize this concept?
Yes.
That's what they were talking about?
Yes. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu realized. V'nachnu mo. What are we? Nothing. That's what he realized. In other words, he had an incredible perception of absolute reality, where there is nothing else. You see? And that's you experience that idea in the 7,000th year. After the Mashiach is over, at the year 6,000, which is the English year 2240, then the world just changes, right? And all of a sudden we realize that everybody that we thought that were men of reputation, chashiva people, nothing. There is no chashivas at all in the ultimate reality. And that's the beginning of the preparation for eternal reward. Because it is that understanding of reality, that there's only God, and you attach to the real reality, right? That's really what the ultimate reward is. As long as you think that maybe you're somebody, or Moshe Rabbeinu is somebody, that is a blockage in understanding that God is the only reality. You see,
So Olam Haba starts only after a year.
Well, there's 6,000, and the whole world ends from 6 to 7,000, right? Then the physical universe changes. Remember, it's the whole concept of zikuch, where the whole physical universe becomes spiritual. But the soul doesn't, but the individual who's physical and has an neshama, soul, doesn't change. His change begins in the 8,000th and the 9,000th year, 2,000 years. By the time the end of the 8,000 years, which is the beginning of the 9th, that's when the individual becomes completely spiritual. And that's the beginning of Olam Haba. Olam Haba begins in the 9,000th year. That's why it says, Assyria Kodesh. And the 10th, referring to tithe, will be holy. And therefore, that's when a person changes. And Olam Haba begins in the 9,000th year. But it does make a difference. As soon as the Mashiach hits, this charade, this nonsense that goes on is over. Just that the transformation takes time.
Hashem Levado, then according to your explanation, how do you reconcile madregos? Madregos.
It means with the concept called illusion, there are madregas. Because in the end, you have an illusion.
You started here. At the end of the day, you're starting at a different point than Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yes, but you never. Okay, so therefore what? What's the question?
When you see Moshe Rabbeinu,
yeah,
he'll be there, unless it's all internal.
It's internal.
Meaning you'll just see everybody as.
Yeah, except you don't know what the guy's experiencing internally. But Dvekus is a very subjective experience. You don't know what the other guy's doing. You know what I'm saying? But it's internal. I don't see it as having an external display where he's in some type of humongous palace and you're in some shack. You know what I'm saying?
I understand that's only a mushal.
Yeah. But anyway, But anyway.
You're burned by Yadam's chuppah.
Yeah, but that's only initially, and then after a while, it was, imagine being burnt forever by his chuppah. Then Olam Haba is Gehenna. I mean, what's the whole point of eternally being burnt or embarrassed by the other guy's place? Then you might as well call Gehenna and not Olam Haba. Obviously, But anyway, so these are a lot of the very important ground rules and categories of that. But remember, everything is determined. The foundational concept is Olam Haba, right? That determined man. Nam de Ksufa determined the different places and the tasks and all that. So the most important decision God ever made was two. If you think about that, the first decision God made was, I want to make an Olam Haba and somebody's got to be in there. That was the first incredible decision. The second incredible decision was, he's got to work for it. That's the concept of bread of shame and inferiority. Those two decisions determine everything, you see. But remember, Nam de Ksufa, even though it's the second most important decision God ever made, is temporary. Because it's only until we get to Olam Haba, right? Once you get to Olam Haba, it's gone. There's no inferiority anymore. It's just an eternal bliss. You see? So those are the two most important decisions God ever made. You see? Yeah, I mean, we'll get into other ideas, but you can ask a question. Those people who have done it took a great deal of evil, for instance. So God is going to say, well, you can't have me in Olam Haba because because you didn't do any good. So the guy's going to say, listen, let me work off my evil, fine, Even though I don't have enough good in Olam Haba, right? It's true, and therefore I didn't do any good. Once, we'll get into that, but a guy can say, well, listen, the good, whatever, you'll erase the evil, right? And the good is gone because I've experienced it in this world. So give it to me for free. You see? So God will say,
I'll forget the Namak Sufa.
I'll suffer with the Namak Sufa for eternally, but at least I get Olam Haba. You see? For some reason, God doesn't buy into that argument. Which is interesting, because I'm sure everybody, the guy will say, listen, you're right, I did an incredible amount of evil, I'll burn it off. Whatever that means, right? Okay, so now I'm empty, I have no evil, and the good I got, God will give me the good in this world. So I got nothing, But wait a minute, do me a favor. Give me Olam Haba, with Namak Sufa, right? Because obviously I didn't cause anything, no good, But God does not buy that argument. It's interesting,
What's so hard? The person, it'll be such an agony that person would rather disappear.
I want to tell you
Nowadays,
something.
people fool themselves. Nowadays, people.
Do you know how many
fool
people there are on welfare?
But they fool themselves. They think they're deserving.
You know what? What's a
They
wait?
make excuses, or they express, or they try to make themselves important, or they blow up their ego, one or the other.
No, let me tell you something. You have any idea how many guys are on the take? It's incredible. You know how many charities there are and welfare systems and so on, and people live like this for decades, where they're accepting charity every day. You see, you don't find Namak Sufa by these guys. You're not embarrassed. What?
Because they fool themselves.
So they fool themselves, Olam Haba.
And all MS?
Why not?
When there's no shikha?
It became their nature.
I'm just showing you that people really do not care about Namak Sufa. Because there's so many people, who receive welfare benefits, all this kind of stuff, for decades. They don't seem to be suffering under inferiority because they never caused it, and so on, It's interesting, it's an interesting, what?
Signing Matanis Yechid.
You have it in your
Yeah.
Doing fine. Just
Everybody's just for, yeah.
the
They
money
can't fool
comes.
themselves. About
Yeah,
everything. It's
I mean,
not
you-
bliss.
you know.
The agony.
Again?
Not for you.
That bad.
Yeah. Wait, what?
In Olam Haba, how do you resolve the idea, two ideas? One, that each individual person in Klal Yisrael has their own personal Olam Haba, but yet Klal Yisrael is a single unit of Yichud that has a Devekus with the Ritban Shalom as well. How does this resolve in Olam Haba, this interplay between yichud, the yichud of the individual versus the yichud of the group?
There is a connection, obviously, between all the neshamas. So what will happen is that the yichud of the group, or the unification of the group soul called Jew, right, will complement this man, and then there's his individual. So the variations won't exist as in the fact that you're part of the group. That's true. There's no variations of that because that's a group. It's a group reward. So in the fact that you're part of the Jewish nation, it's the concept of a national pleasure. You will get that. But what will vary, and that's where you have the variations here, is your individual will now become part of that. So it would be two things going on at the same time. That's how I would see it.
The Rosh
Yeah.
said at the beginning of the year, something is 90, we got 98%.
Back, yeah.
But explain to me though, the body, tragically, the body of the Jewish people, our brethren, they're doing Chil Shabbos, all the...
Yeah.
Doesn't that give energy? The sun should be the most powerful
No.
now.
No. I once explained that. No. The only time the Satan can derive energy from the Jewish sin is if that sin is accompanied with free will. All these people that are gone, there's no sin. There's Tinish Kenishbo. A Tinish Kenishbo even if he sins, it's not considered anything because there's no free will attached. You see? Besides the sin, you have to do it freely. If you do it because you don't know anything, God considers the circumstances. And the circumstances dictate your free will. And in other words, you have the capacity for free will, but you are not exercising free will because you don't know anything. You see? You're not exercising, there's no choice that you have that I could say, well, I want A instead of B. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's certain things there are, but in most things, certainly in mitzvahs, God doesn't know anything, The only one basically who can give Satan, it's interesting, the only people that can give the Satan energy, right, is religious people. Charedim, or B'nai Torah, yeah. You see? That's why the Satan, his major emphasis to make sin are the B'nai Torah, the Charedim, yeah. Because when they sin, they do it with free will, and they're feeding the Satan. But it's not enough, you see. And so on. God's got the whole balance here, but they're the only ones that are doing it, you see. That's why the Satan, that's one of the reasons why the Satan has such a heavy emphasis on making sure that the religious hate each other. Sinas chinam and lashon hara, which is rampant, unfortunately, with the Haredim, and there's no unity with the Haredim, Because with the non-Jews, not with the Jews who don't know anything, who cares?